Welcome to Hope Talks podcast with Grayson Willis and Pastor Margaret Michael, where you'll hear inspiring stories that are filled with hope and good news in Jesus Christ. You can also search for our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and TuneIn. We would love your feedback and invite you to take a short anonymous survey. You can find the link to the survey in the show notes.
Welcome to today's broadcast of Hope Talks. I'm Grayson Willis.
And I'm Pastor Margaret Michael. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm really excited. We have Nik Tucker with us today, and I've gotten to know Nik some over the past year or so, and just thought it would be really cool to have you come in and join us. So welcome. Thanks for being here today, saying yes.
I appreciate it, y'all. That was an honor to be here.
Yeah.
Honor to be here.
It's good to have you, Nik. And Nik's here to share his testimony today. Nik, just start out telling us about where you're from and about how you grew up.
So what's up, y'all? I'm Nik Tucker. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, the good old 704. I'm kind of from the south side of Charlotte, so in a little suburb called Matthews, and that's where I mainly grew up. That's where we moved when I was like in kindergarten. So grew up there. Yeah, basically growing up in that area, my dad got saved when I was probably around I would say 9 or 10 years old. And, my mom, kind of interesting, situation just because we would go to church as a family. And, one day my mom was just like, this is just not for me, and everything I actually, don't know what I believe. I'm just going to church for y'all. And so there was kind of an interesting, dynamic in terms of figuring out my own faith and everything growing up. But pretty much in terms of, the Christian faith, and just walking out, this walk with Jesus, my dad would, tell me a lot about the Bible. I had a Bible. I was around friends that were Christians and everything, but I would say I was more culturally Christian in terms of just going to church, just kind of doing the things, but not necessarily actually having a heart posture of knowing Jesus. And so I didn't really know what it meant to pray or to read the Bible and what the Bible even meant, honestly. But growing up, my main focus, was not trying to follow Jesus. My main focus was simply trying to fit in, honestly. Anyone that was in, school with me, I went to a public school, and I actually pretty much the way that my school was set up. So my school was called Weddington, and there was Weddington Elementary, Weddington Middle School, and Weddington High School. Wow. Now, we were a big school, so it wasn't like a small little school, and it was interesting, but all of them were on the same campus pretty much, but it was a big campus. But I mean, my high school, by the time I was, done, we had 1,300, 1,400 students, right? So, but I've been around the same people ever since elementary school. And so was trying to fit in with the same people pretty much throughout all my schooling, and everything. And so I found that, a lot of social anxiety, was what I struggled with. I played soccer, so I found some of my worth and identity, from that. And soccer was kind of the main driving force, I feel that kind of guided my life. It was my idea was I'm gonna play soccer and I'm gonna see how far soccer takes me. So that was me growing up, was mainly my focus was, being around my family, hanging around my friends. What little friends I did have, honestly, I didn't really have many friends, but the friends that I did have were really solid. But in terms of being I had friends that were homeschooled at the time, and they were the ones that actually, I feel their family poured into me a lot when it came to my faith. And so in the midst of me, trying to find, I wouldn't say popularity, but in the midst of me trying to fit in the public school I was going to, I had my friends that were homeschooled that were kind of my ride or dies, my, my brothers, and everything that they took me in as a third brother, so it was definitely really cool to have that influence around me. And so in the midst of me trying to chase my soccer dreams and everything, I feel God had always been planting seeds in me growing up. So and soccer is what took me actually to come to Harrisonburg. I got recruited. Well, let me back up a little bit. Basically, my junior year of high school, I had basically a situation with my coach where I was a starter. I was a starter on my high school team, all that kind of stuff. And I remember him taking my starting position away to give this to this other guy. It didn't really make sense because I felt I was at the the peak of I don't know, the peak of my, I don't even know the words.
High school soccer career,
yeah,
right?
Peak of my high school soccer career. I can't even, think of words right now. But I felt I was at the peak of my high school soccer career. And then my coach is doing this, so I'm it kind of took a shot at what I thought my dreams and goals were and everything, to be honest. And I was I don't know if the soccer thing is really for me, if this is going to happen. But that was how fragile my identity was. And that's how fragile my foundation was, honestly. But fast forward to senior year, I finally was like, you know what, I do want to play soccer. I want to take this seriously, because I had pretty much a breakout season, and we won states. We won our state championship. So at this point, I'm like, all right, I really want to ride this momentum going to college. Well, at that point, D3 schools are the only schools, or maybe some D2 schools are the only schools that are still recruiting. Yeah. D1 schools, they stopped recruiting your sophomore, junior year and everything. They'd already chosen who they wanted. So I was like, the D3 route doesn't seem bad. And so I got recruited by a couple of D3 schools, but one of them was Eastern Mennonite. So I ended up going to Eastern Mennonite University, and that's what brought me to Harrisonburg. So that's kind of like the beginning part of my testimony about how I got to Harrisonburg, and just kind of seeing how God was working through that to bring me here. And I understand now why, he's brought me here, in terms of just everything he was setting in place was just, you can see it. You can see his hand all over it. So
it was like a thread you can pull throughout your life, and you can see.
Yeah.
Before we move on to Harrisonburg testimony, can you hit on two things that I think are really important. Cultural Christianity.
Yeah.
Being that cultural, I don't know if can you call it Christianity? Like
I don't think you can.
I don't think either. I think that's an oxymoron.
I think that's something that we just talk about. Like, I think that's just a
word
phrase
we
that
throw out,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about that before we move forward? Because I think that's so important. Like, and we talk about in here all the time that we cannot get to heaven on our parents' faith. Yeah. We have to have our own. Mm-hmm. God doesn't have any grandchildren, right?
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Chill. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. No,
but it's true.
It's a bar.
But I think that we can see, and my mind goes to my own story. We all have our own story. Those listening today have their own story, right?
Right.
What does that look like? To be a part of a community and the cultural piece of that, because so often we just follow what our parents, what we've seen happen. I think COVID kind of, messed some of that up, where people, hey, I can actually go to another church online, or I can.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, do you have any thoughts about that? Sounds like you do. You already brought it up. So.
Yeah. I agree. I think that was a accurate statement. I don't think that there is such thing as a cultural Christian. Like, I don't think that at that point, I don't think you can even put Christian next to, you're either under his lordship or you're not.
It's religion at that point.
You know what I'm saying? It's religion. And I think that one thing that I've realized over time is that religion itself, a lot of people say like, it's relationship, not religion, right? Yeah. But I think that there's, this is just my perspective. I think that religion is not bad. I think that religion is based on your belief, how you set up your life, right? Yeah. And I think if you believe in Jesus, you claim to follow Jesus, I think that your life and the structure of your life, the disciplines in your life, should follow. You know what I'm saying? So there's an aspect that out of the relationship that you have with Jesus, you actually form a healthy version of religion. Everything, not a I'm forced to go here, or I'm a drug baby, which means that I got dragged to church. You know what I'm saying? Got dragged to church. I never really felt like I was drugged to church, honestly. Because I felt like I still wanted to go. Like, I think there was always a piece in me that God was always working on. So I think that the thing is that I would go, because my dad would go, or, when my family stopped going, I would go with my friend's family because we went to the same church. I would go, and honestly, maybe didn't even really know what the worship songs were like meant. Like, I didn't know, like, for me, but there was always this feeling, and, you're not supposed to chase feelings. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to, set your foundation on your faith. But I always felt different when I went to church. Like, I always felt like there was something different about people gathering together, you know what I'm saying, worshiping. I would see people worship, didn't know why people raised their hands, didn't know why, these certain things. Yeah. I'm like, why are these people on their knees, like, really crying out to Jesus? Like, what is going on and everything? Like, what am I not seeing? You know what I'm saying? Like, what am I not seeing or experiencing that is there? And so I think that was always in the back of my mind. But, I don't think it was until college that I really understood what that meant, because growing up in the church, like, maybe I didn't grow up in the church like since like a baby, but I grew up in the church enough to where I would say that, like, I was, somewhat churchy. And so there was an aspect there that baptism was talked about. I've heard plenty of times the gospel and everything, but I don't think the gospel, like, there was times that the gospel made me emotional, but I don't think that it actually rooted deep in me. You know what I'm saying? So it was talked about, and I'm like, wow, this man Jesus died for me and everything. But it was like, if you look at the fruit of my life after that would happen, like, nothing was changing. You You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's that kind of, I think about the parable of the sower, right?
yeah.
Yeah, there's different soil.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Soil wasn't, the soil of your life maybe
wasn't deep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I don't know if y'all mind, me telling a little bit more about my testimony.
Sure, please.
One thing that I kind of forgot to mention in the midst of all this is that, when I was in the 4th grade, I got introduced to pornography. So I was about 9-10 years old when I got introduced to, pornography. And so that was a big part of my faith walk, kind of like my faith journey, is being introduced to that, and pornography being an addiction, like a legit addiction.
Yep.
I was addicted to porn, and then I also, because I think that I just have an addictive personality, I was addicted to like food as well. I would like sneak like candy and food behind like, my parents' backs. Like I just did it all the time, but none of that stuff ever really showed up because I was like a athlete at the top, the top tier of my game. You know what I'm saying? So you never really saw like weight gain, and then also pornography, I would just sneak that. And so understanding that in the midst of all this that I'm like asking questions about in terms of my faith and everything, like I have like these dark addictions that are happening behind closed doors that were kind of almost making me like, I don't even know, like it just made me feel so distant. You know what I'm saying? From the possibility,
isolation,
just shame and guilt and all this type of stuff. So
Yeah.
for me, I feel like there was just such a battle. Like I'm like over here, got social anxiety, trying to fit in with folks at school and not say the wrong thing so that they don't make fun of me, or, all this kind of stuff, like living life on edge, like on, all the time. And then you got this stuff behind the scenes that I'm just like constantly going through a cycle of like, feeling shame and guilt, but I actually couldn't feel, because I didn't have a relationship with Jesus, like actually like knowing him, like chasing him, pursuing him. Like I didn't know what true forgiveness was, and I didn't know like what true peace was. I didn't know what true freedom was like. So like I'm over here just getting battered down on all, all angles. But like, but for me, I think I used to be afraid to tell my testimony in terms of that, because a lot of people have been through a lot of hard things, right? But for me, I'm this white suburban kid from, Charlotte, North Carolina, that seemed to have everything, together. So it's like, why should I, talk about my story? I didn't go through anything like super crazy. I just had these, to me, I was minimizing and saying I got these little addictions behind closed doors, when in God's eyes, like it was a big deal to him, for me to have to deal with this. So, yeah. So all in all, to bring this full circle, I don't think there is such thing. If you say that you're culturally, or that there's a cultural Christian, that person's not really a Christian at all. The Bible says, Jesus said that he'll spit you out. If you're lukewarm and everything, you're either hot or you're cold. I have a lyric I wrote in a song just, recently that I said, you're either hot or you're cold. There's no in between. And so that's for me, like kind of like what I've been thinking about is like, what does my life look like now, even after following Jesus? Am I still allowing him to like keep me on fire? Or are there areas in my life that I'm lukewarm? Because those are the areas that me and God need to deal with. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Nick, as you were talking, there's a couple things that stuck out to me. Number one, with that last part you're talking about there about being hot or cold, or he spits you out. That's kind of the idea of being all in or being not at all in.
Yeah.
So if you want to share about that, and then also you talked about you got into porn and you got addicted to it. So just if you want to share about how you overcame that addiction, how God helped you out of that addiction.
Yeah. Leading into that, is it cool if I go ahead and share a little bit about my story in Harrisonburg? Because
absolutely.
That's the big,
absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? That's the big, big journey that, kind of. So coming into Harrisonburg, mind you, one thing about growing up, and I feel like a Christian family, growing up around Christian people, I think there was this aspect that even though I wasn't following Jesus, there was like a certain level. I was kind of the good kid. You know what I'm saying? Like I was the good kid on the outside, like trying to present that to my parents, all that kind of stuff. Coming to college in a city that's not mine, that's like 5 hours away, I kind of could do whatever I wanted. You know what I'm saying? So I came in here and kind of put on this, good kid mantra, like coming into college as a freshman and everything. I was like, I wouldn't go to parties, but I would DD. I would like be a designated driver to like drive my teammates, you know what I'm saying, to parties and all this kind of stuff. And, kind of was just around it. Like, you kind of like tiptoe the line of like, kind of being near something. Like it's really dangerous to play with sin like that. But like, kind of like just being on the fence and everything, like knowing that I actually technically want to be in that party. I want to be drinking. I want to be doing this. Mind you, I never drank, never smoked, and everything, like, in high school, I never, even got around that crowd to like, I didn't even know where to find the parties. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like people that were partying in high school, I didn't know. But, as time, progressed in college, I was like, my you could say my standard, my morality, or maybe honestly, it was just the facade that I'd put up that I was this good kid started breaking down. So it was like slowly I was like, I'll take a sip of this. Okay. Yeah, I'll go do this with you, with y'all. I'll go chase after, this girl. And mind you, pornography like taints your brain. So like,
Right.
Pornography had my brain all kinds of twisted. So I was just like struggling with lust and everything. And, honestly was a virgin up until coming into college. Kind of got into the party scene, being a college athlete, there's just a certain, a certain mantra. But in my opinion, the way that I started acting was like a, excuse me, but a grade A D-bag, honestly, and everything. I was acting like a tool, and everything. And, started going to the party, started drinking, started smoking, all this kind of stuff. And it just like went down. And I'm addictive. Like I have an addictive personality. So like I'm normally there was not like an in between. It was like either 0 or 100. Like, I would get like blackout drunk basically, like at all these parties. Like I just would like drink until I felt like, I couldn't anymore, or I would not remember, what I'm saying? So I would do that. But in the midst of that, got involved, actually like lost my virginity in my junior year of college. And like, that was what I felt like kind of tipped me over the edge. Like my first semester of my junior year was probably the craziest semester in terms of just like, the people, I was around. It wasn't, no knock on, any of those, guys that I was around. Like those like were like my friends in college, and, and we were having fun with each other and stuff like that. But I just felt like it got to a point where it was like, man, I don't even recognize myself anymore. Everything. Like I'm still struggling with porn behind the scenes. Now I'm struggling with sex addiction because I invited that into my life, like invited, intercourse in my life. So that was, just not good. But the drinking and smoking was kind of, out of control, and all that. And I remember hitting a point where I'm doing the same thing every weekend. Kind of just life looks the same. I'm even drinking in classes sometimes, like before classes, smoking, hitting these little like dab pens, like in classes, like just doing a bunch of stuff. And then there was just a point where I was like just depressed, like just kind of like, yo, this is terrible. I don't really know what I'm doing with my life, and all that. And I feel like that was the point where it was like God was really shaking me and was like, what kind of man do you want to be? You know what I'm saying? Like what is this stuff? You're doing all this stuff and everything, but you're trying to present this like this other image in front of you and everything. It's like that's a hard way to live, being a slave to people's, perception of you, but also being a slave to these addictions behind the scene. I was like, you're getting pulled in two different directions. And I felt like my arms were coming off, they were being torn off from both sides. And so that was kind of the point that like God was like basically sat me down, was like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? I had to get surgery that year. And I remember, having to come back home, and be taken care of by my parents, which was very humbling. I had surgery on my hip, and that was the point where I got taken away from all that I was doing. And remind you, I just turned 21, so I could like start, going to whatever. But like literally right as I turned 21, I have to go home to get surgery. Right. And I'm home for like 2.5 months. Right. I actually, right before I left, I went to a campus ministry event at the church that I was going to. Mind you, I didn't mention this, but in the midst of me being, in that lifestyle, I actually had started going to church as a freshman in college at Divine Unity Community Church. I got invited, me and some of the guys on the soccer team, we got invited by some of the girls on the soccer team. So of course we're like, the girls are like, hey, like, let's go, but the funny part is I went to church like almost every Sunday, even in the midst of me being hungover. Like, I don't know why, but I just knew how to like go. Yeah. And in the midst of that, like God was still speaking to me, like, in the midst of all that, like his patience is crazy. Like he's just like, he's amazing. And so I was going to church. And so mind you, I didn't realize there was a campus ministry connected with the church. I would have been cool if I knew that earlier. But yeah, I got invited by a friend, and actually that was around the time that I just hit that low point, that, depressive, kind of like, yo, this sucks. And, my friend invited me there, and I actually got introduced to, my, big brother of mine. He was the campus minister at the time, guy that, disciples me, his name is, Gabe Kreider. And, Gabe kind of like, he got my number. And while I was home for surgery, my dad's asking me, what kind of man do you want to be? Like, you're not slick. He sees my Instagram posts, and he's like, we know that you're partying. Like, we know where you're at, like the apartment complexes that you're at. Like, we know what you're doing. And then Gabe is texting me talking about like, hey man, like, how are you doing? We're praying for you, all this kind of stuff. Like, when you come back, you should get plugged in. And so that was the start of my journey, like for real with Christ, where it was like, I got plugged into a community that was like helping me do it. And so I feel like that's what happened with my journey with being free from porn addiction was, one, experiencing Jesus for real in April of 2019, like having an encounter with him that was real and that I knew was real. And that was the point where I said, no, I got to give my life to you. Like, I don't know what I've been doing this little half in, half out, or even just this just showing up and watching, you like a movie rather than actually living in it. But I was like, I'm down to do this. Like, I can't live like this. My life is out of control. You know what I'm saying? Which is something we talk about in Celebrate Recovery.
That's right.
Here at Church of the Nazarene, we talk about, admitting that we're powerless and that our life is unmanageable and out of control. And so that was the point where I was like, Lord, I can't do this on my own. And so that was the start of my journey of being free. Like, God started addressing all the addictions that I have, the wrong mindsets, addressing my shame and guilt, the cycles that I was going through and everything. And, walking that out in community and confessing. When I learned that confession, how freeing and healing confession is, that's when I feel like I started seeing like real freedom, because like God was actually like healing my heart from me sharing the dark stuff that I never wanted to share before. So that's kind of how I got, started on this journey for the past 4 years, pretty much. Freeing from certain things and that kind of stuff. And, I can say that I've been free from pornography for, I don't even know how long now, but it's been a crazy journey, but, praise Jesus, for real.
Yeah. There's a scripture, 2 Peter 2:4, I believe, talks about the devil and his angels being chained to darkness. And when we are in that darkness and we are isolating, we're in it with them.
Yeah.
And when we speak, like Gabe, I know he's been a tremendous person in your life and many other people's lives, but when we're able to speak the truth, it's a beautiful thing about Celebrate Recovery, a place where you get to do this.
Yeah.
You speak the truth into the light of other believers. Like, you speak it into the light, right?
Yeah.
And the darkness loses power because the devil is chained to darkness, right? And when we speak it into the light, he can't touch it like he could before. He could still tempt us, but he doesn't have us in that bondage, that prison of darkness where it's just us and him.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, just to hear how God pursued you, but he pursued you through other people, right?
Yeah.
Your dad and people like Gabe. And
he did, most definitely.
That's where people think, well, if I share what I'm doing, like, it's over.
Right.
People are going to be done with me. And that's the beautiful thing about the body of Christ. We are supposed to be that place for others to find a place that they can be real, and a community where we can bear one another's burdens, right?
Yeah.
And share. Our burdens are shared and our joys are multiplied, I think is how they say that, when we come into community.
You mind if I just share like a little tidbit? One thing that I feel like connected to this, my pastor back home used to say, the scene of the crime is your mind. And one thing I realized is that like the enemy a lot of times will use your mind and use those places. Like, if he can like kind of trap you in there, he can do a lot of things. Like, a lot of stuff starts at your head, and if it moves down to your heart, you'll end up doing it. And so I think getting that stuff out in the light, like speaking it out loud, the same way the Lord spoke and the earth was created, like the power of the tongue, knowing that when you speak that out, it no longer is inside and can, like, you're not trapped in that anymore. When I say that out loud, it's like, oh my goodness, like now the Lord can work, can work.
Well, we give it to the Lord in that moment, and the enemy loses power.
Exactly.
And that's what he tells us won't happen.
Which is crazy.
The enemy will tell us that that's not the way it's going to go down.
He tries to scare us into, not being free.
Right. Yeah. He's just a big bully.
He's a dummy.
Well, Nik, you shared about being involved with Celebrate Recovery here at the Church of the Nazarene. Talk about how you got involved in that and what that's been like. Yeah.
At my church at Divine Unity, so we have like a men's recovery group that happens, but it's like a 10 to 12 week thing. Like, so it's not like something that's like offered all the time, right? So I remember going to it, and this is like at a point in my walk too, where I was like, I know my life was unmanageable before and everything, but I was like, okay, I'm walking with Jesus and things are better, but like, I think I wasn't addressing certain things, like head on and everything, where I was like, all right, like, I'm kind of like, I'm holding on to Jesus, but I'm kind of holding on over here. So it was kind of like, is my whole life really in his, have I really handed my whole life over? And so I remember, the men's recovery group being advertised at my church. I went to it, but to be honest, even being in there, like I guess I didn't really want to do the work. Like I was kind of lazy in that aspect. Like I didn't want to, go in there and really reap the benefits of the entire program of like going through, doing the homework. It's kind of similar to like a step study almost, that, Celebrate Recovery offers. But I remember not taking it seriously and regretting afterwards being like, like I didn't actually dive deep into what I struggle with. But time passes by. I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, is there any place that does this like year round where I can meet weekly and do this? And there was this guy named Ed. I forget Ed's last name.
I remember.
You remember Ed?
Yeah.
Ed Crawford. Yeah, Ed Crawford. Ed, went to Duck. He's moved now, but Ed went to Duck, and I remember him kind of being around. I forget how we got in the conversation, but he was part of the men's recovery group, so I think that's why I asked. But I said, "Yo, is there any like place that offers a year-round, like weekly, like meeting like this and everything?" I was like, I really want to like take this seriously, and he told me about Celebrate Recovery. He said, "Hey, you should meet me on Monday nights.
Yeah.
Like I come to this group, and you should go." And so that was kind of my my journey of getting to CR.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
And now you're in a step study.
Yeah, I'm in step study now. Yeah.
So you've taken it to another level.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's the thing for me is like, I don't know why I wait so long for certain things. Well, the step study, I realized there's a time commitment to that.
Yes.
And everything. And half the time when it would start, I work at this camp during the summers, and I'm gone for 3 months. So it would like start in the spring and it would end in the fall or like end whatever
Yes.
time. And I'd be like, dang, like I would miss out on it for the past 2 times it's been
That's
offered,
right.
and everything. And so this time it was like, nah, now I got time to, it starts now. I was like, I saw that text, from someone, I think it was my boy Ben Luna. I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
I said, let's go, Ben, let's do it.
Yeah.
So now I'm in that, and that's been really interesting. Like even off the first couple of weeks of diving deep into family history and just a lot of different things. I'm like, oh snap, we about to.
It's getting real.
it's about to get real in the field.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And it's not an easy journey, but man, sometimes you have to go back and just deal with the stuff so you can move on.
Thank you for listening to today's broadcast of Hope Talks. You've been listening to part 1 of Nik Tucker's testimony, and we pray that you will join us next Sunday for part 2 of Nik's testimony. We're going to close today's program with a song by Nik Tucker, and I hope you enjoy it. May God bless.
Yeah. Are you serious?
Hey, no. When the storm comes, I stay still 'cause you help me set my feet. And I'm waiting for you bless me with your peace and love, my King. So I cry out, you're the one who hears my call when I'm in need. And I lay down, I can rest because you've claimed the victory. Yeah, and I be standing still. You gave me a new heart and blessed me with the love that's real. Yeah, and now I'm really healed. I'm grateful for you, God. I'm standing strong upon this hill. When you set my feet, cooling me down when I feel the heat. I'm raising my arms when I feel defeat. I'm giving my all to you, my King. When the waves are splashing, I won't move 'cause my feet are fastened. Locked in now with your peace surpassing. I'm asking you for the faith that's lasting. I'll stop running and running. Here's my life and I hand it all to you. I'll stop running and running. Here's my life and I hand it all to you. When the storm comes, I stay still 'cause you help me set my feet. And I'm waiting for you bless me with your peace and love, my King. So I cry out, you're the one who hears my call when I'm in need. And I lay down, I can rest because you've claimed the victory. I lay down my pain, I lay down my hurt and my stains. I'm giving my all to you, Lord, and you're bringing me back to your arms and I'm saved. I fall on my face, I'm falling in love and in grace. The work can be heavy as ever, but light as a feather, my Father remains. Man, you taking my weight, renewing my soul, and you giving me faith. I'm a child of the King, and I'm not a mistake. Now I ride for you, Lord, since you're sealing my faith. Man, I gotta go pick up my cross, denying myself for the King. And there was a point I was lost, but you found me, so now I can sing. Love you, my King. When the storm comes, I stay still 'cause you help me set my feet. And I'm waiting for you bless me with your peace and love, my King.
Hope Talks is sponsored by Church of the Nazarene Harrisonburg in partnership with Sunshine Ministries.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast of Hope Talks. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe for updates and the latest episodes. Also, if you're in the Harrisonburg-Rockingham County area, we invite you to listen on the radio each Sunday at noon on 1470 AM or 102.1 FM WBTX.